Okay, so we're back here, and I'm going to go back to this course material page, right? And this time I want to look at the term paper assignment. So this folder is going to stay right here at the top, so you can easily access it whenever you want to find out something about the term paper. And you've got four items in here. You have a link to the term paper assignment itself, which we'll look at together in a moment. And this directions for the life story interview process, which is the heart and kind of central feature of your term paper. And then you have a link to help you creating APA style citations and structuring your paper in APA style, and then some general information related to this life story interview. So let's look at the term paper. So your term paper is due on November 30th. This is not a typical term paper. You're not going to have to do the kind of research that you often have to do for term papers, and you're not going to be writing a summary of research for me. Instead, what you're going to be doing is completing an interview with an individual in middle to late adulthood, so age 40 or later. In the past, lots of students have then said, oh, come back to me and say, can I interview somebody who's 25? In order to do this, in order for this to feel meaningful in the right kind of way, it really needs to be somebody in kind of the second half of their life. Somebody who has enough life history to draw on in telling their story, that there's enough material for you to use. So your first task is to think about who in your life do you want to interview? And I would think about a couple of things with this. First, I should say before we go any further, the interview and the questions for the interview are prescribed to you. It is a script. You're not going to have to come up with interview questions. You're not going to need to, and you can't deviate from the script and decide on interview questions. So that piece, again, is given to you. And so as you're thinking about who to interview, many people do choose somebody very close to them. I've had students have told me they've had very meaningful experiences, for example, interviewing a grandparent and finding out lots about their life that they wouldn't have known otherwise, or an older parent. People often do spouses, and that is fine as well. The important thing to do is that you need to remember that whoever you interview, if they're a person close to you, you need to be willing to hear their answers. And so you can't, be defensive about their answers or be disappointed in their answers or want to negate their answers. You need to be, so if somebody is so close to you that you're going to have a hard time hearing what they have to say about their life, then choose somebody else. But if you're open-minded and you have the kind of relationship where you're going to be comfortable hearing about potentially difficult pieces of their life, and they're going to be comfortable telling you about potentially difficult pieces of their life, then by all means choose somebody close to you. But you also can choose somebody that is not a very intimate member of your life, somebody who you know well enough to ask and who's comfortable enough to do this for you, but it doesn't have to be a family member. So this is a good time to start thinking about this. I am going to ask you in Module 1, you might have seen as we were looking at that in the last video, I am going to ask you just to tell me who you're thinking of. And maybe, you're thinking of them and you've asked them and they've said yes and you're pretty sure that's where you're going to go. Kind of give me that now so that I can kind of give you feedback and make sure that you're thinking about it. So you need to choose somebody, and then you need to familiarize yourself with the life story interview. And we'll look at that in just a moment. And know that you're going to follow that interview exactly. And then you're going to conduct that interview following that format. The interview is likely to take at least 2 hours. Obviously, that may not be something you're going to do face-to-face, but if you're not doing it face-to-face, I really would like you to figure out some way of doing that over video. So you can use FaceTime or Google Meet or Zoom or whatever you want to use. But it really is very different to do this where you can see the person's face than when they're just on the phone. So I completely understand that some of these may not be live interviews. All of them may not be live interviews for that matter, but that they should be video interviews. So keep that in mind. It is going to take a couple of hours, and you can certainly break this into a couple of sessions if you want, though ideally I think it works best to do it all at once, so the person doesn't have time to kind of think and want to renege some of their answers, or edit some of their answers in some way. So if you can do it in one sitting, that would be awesome. That might be more challenging over video than it would be in person. And so let's just take those parts for a second, and let me come back here and look at that life story interview. Right, so the directions for the life story interview. There we go. So, right, so in the introductory comments, it does, I think, here talk about research study they're going to do, and you can just omit those parts. So you can start by telling the person that this is an interview about the story of your life. We're asking you to play the role of a storyteller about your own life, right? So read these parts to them, or paraphrase them very, very closely. But you're not going to say this part, right? You're not going to say, as social scientists, our goal is to collect. You're just going to say those first couple of sentences there. And then you're going to skip here, that telling us your story. You don't need to tell us everything that's ever happened to you, right? It's selective. And so you can, you can kind of know those things. But the more important thing is that you start here. The interview is divided into a number of sections. And it's important that we not get bogged down in the early sections, especially the first one. So you're going to give them these prompts. You're setting the scene for them. And then this is the first, right? This is the first question. And so you're going to read this. We'd like you to begin by thinking about your life as a story. And then they're going to break their life into chapters. But you're following this essentially as a script. You don't have to read it in a robotic way to them, but you do more or less need to read these instructions to get it right. And you can see, you'll take a look at this, make sure you're really familiar with this before going into the interview. So make sure you've read it over and you've thought about it, and you need to go through all parts of it. Okay, so you could start getting familiar with that. Where are we? Here we are, right? And so you're going to conduct your interview, and then you're going to reflect on things you've learned in the course. So pieces of theory we've talked about, pieces of research we've talked about, concepts we've talked about, and you're going to apply those to thinking about this life story that you just heard. And then you're also going to choose 2 peer-reviewed articles that are on that Foley Center site. So we come back here, let's see, this general information about the Foley Center story. If you go up here to papers, that's what that link is that I've provided in the PDF. It's just a list of papers. And you're going to choose 2 of those papers that they've published, and you're going to use those and the information in those articles to also reflect on your story and make sense of your story. And so the format and the grading is outlined pretty clearly here. Of the 200 points, you can see how many points each of these sections get and what you have to do in each section, right? You have an intro, you have kind of a summary by question or topic from the life story. So not just an ongoing summary, but like life chapters. Tell me what the life chapters were. I'm thinking for most of you, this is going to be at least 5 pages long. This is going to be the bulk of your paper in terms of the text. Most of your writing is going to be here. And so you can ask the person, if you're doing this over Zoom, you can ask them whether they are okay with you recording the Zoom session. If you're not, then you're going to be wanting to make copious notes as you go along to make sure you capture things. And you're likely to want to use some quotes here. This should not be a transcript, and you should not be quoting everything, but you're likely to want to use quotes here or closely paraphrase. So make sure that you've captured the information in a way that will let you do that. So that's the second section, and then you've got a section with those course concepts that are applied here, and you're going to kind of make sense of the story using those. You don't need to cite here since it's course material, but you will need to cite in the next section, this application of Foley Center research papers. You're going to cite in text and tell me what article you're referring to, and of course in the end you're going to give me an APA style reference list. But you're going to take a look at what they thought. So pick articles that you can't pick the articles until you've listened to the interview and made some sense of the life story, because then you're going to look for articles that touch on themes that you think also came up in your life story. So that you're not going to be able to choose the articles till after you complete the first piece of this. And then you have a conclusion. that I really want you to have. It doesn't have to be long, but it does have to show significant reflection. I mean, this is 30 points out of the 200. It's 15% of your grade. It can't just be kind of a a quickly written conclusion. I want to see significant reflection on your experience doing this. And then you have an APA style reference page, and you have to apply APA style to the paper. So we'll have other opportunities, certainly if we have those live video sessions, to talk about the term project. This won't be the last time we get to talk about it. And then remember that you, in that course, in Mod 1, you have under your activities and assignments, this life story subject selection due on the 6th to me. So by the 6th, I'd like you to have a pretty good idea of who you're going to do this with. And you'll also be able to post questions to me when you submit that, if you have specific questions that haven't been answered yet. We also have at the end of every, at the bottom of every module, this course questions discussion, and that is a great place. That's like raising your hand in class at the beginning or end of class. So course questions isn't about learning content, but it is about, like, I'm not sure what you mean by this in the term paper assignment, and post it there so everyone can see the answer, as opposed to emailing me privately. Email me privately when there's a private question, but when it's something that applies to everyone, then you should use this course questions, and that'll be in every module, so you'll be able to click on that. Okay. All right. So hopefully we will talk soon, and you guys can get started and get comfortable. Okay. Bye-bye.